have a thesis. And I saw a couple of people flipping through copies of the book, and you probably don't know it yet, because for some reason, unlike a good researcher, I put it at the end. Mainly, I was writing the entire book, and I was having these conversations with a variety of different corporate and entrepreneurial leaders. And one person during one of the conversations said something that I thought was brilliant, and so I decided I should put it in the book, and I made the mistake of putting it at the end. And I'd say it was a mistake because it's really sort of the guiding thesis for the entire book, and it's this. Great leaders don't innovate the product, they innovate the factory. And I realize how dangerous it is to say that at a place like this, right? But what I mean is that innovations to the factory being a metaphor for all of our workplaces, precede innovations to the products, right? The innovations that we make to how we work and where we work precede our ability to innovate in any other situation. And this has been true for hundreds of years. This was true when a young junior consultant first approached Bethlehem Steel and said, I can turn around your problem. Now, you've probably never heard of Bethlehem Steel, that's okay, but their impact resonated for hundreds of years. See, this young junior consultant wanted to help Bethlehem Steel compete with bigger captains of industry like Carnegie Steel and a variety of different places. And so he came with what would later be his world-renowned stopwatch. And he began to study the production process at Bethlehem Steel. And he began to find the optimal way to design that production process. And then he started training the labor force on how to conform to that one best way. And he revolutionized the entire history of manufacturing. He made it possible in the early 1900s for a variety of different industrial growth. Some of you are nodding your heads because you figured out who it is. But if you haven't yet, I'll give you a famous quote that sort of embodies what he believed about the role of management and labor. And it was this: the duty of enforcing the adoption of standards and enforcing this cooperation rests with management alone. He was big on the idea that you had management and you had labor, and it was best to keep the two separate because labor was too dumb to know how to do something the right way. So it was management's job to teach them how to do it, labor's job to just do it, right? This man was Frederick Winslow Taylor. How many of you remember Frederick Winslow Taylor? So I teach undergraduate management classes, and so we have to spend like the first 2 weeks talking about the amazing contribution of Frederick Taylor and also why he was totally wrong. Right? Frederick Taylor was definitely right for his era. He knew that you had to reinvent the factory in order to have all of the innovations we needed to grow. That was very true, and his impact resonated for a really long time. Taylor would write a book called The Principles of Scientific Management that is still in print. It's been over 100 years. Principles of Scientific Management would travel the globe. It would be translated in a variety of languages. Actually, Taylor's grandson remarked one time that he went to Japan to visit executives, and they bowed very deeply to him just because he was the grandson of Frederick Taylor. Taylor's devotees would start a magazine about scientific management that would morph and change, and you know it now as Bloomberg Businessweek. It got its start as a fanzine for Frederick Taylor. He also joined the faculty at Tuck, Dartmouth Business School, one of the first business schools in the country. And he revolutionized Bethlehem Steel in a variety of different industries. We got where we are right now because of what Frederick Taylor did in the physical factories. But where we are right now is not a physical factory. It doesn't look like it. I have not been to many actual manufacturing plants with food this good, right? So it is not a physical factory. We've moved from a physical factory to an idea factory. The products usually aren't made by brute force. Right? The unit of energy or where it lies is not the bicep anymore, it's the brain. Right? We designed it in our heads. We've moved from a physical factory to an idea factory. But we drug Frederick Taylor with us from the factory to the office. And a lot of the ideas inside of management theorists are based in Frederick Taylor's theories. He's the foundation for almost all management thinking. And while we point to things, Peter Drucker was the first to do it, we point to things that signal the shift from industrial work to the knowledge economy. We don't necessarily point to the things that we should probably have not taken with us. And so today I want to talk briefly about a lot of those different things. I've surveyed the Googlers that I know about what would be controversial but not too controversial. Because a lot of these ideas, I find that every innovative company I've spoke at is either doing some of them or deliberately not doing others. And so we'll have that conversation, which I think will be a lot of fun. But I want to start with one that's probably not one of the things you think about, even though it's so vital to our work every day. And when you do think about it, you may not have very positive thoughts. I want to talk about email. And I realize I'm speaking to the group that power like half the world's email. And so I don't want to tell you you're wrong. But I do want to join with you in saying, how many of you actually hate your email inbox? And the Gmail inbox is one of the better ones. right, for dealing with the problem of email, right? Everybody's making note on who raised their hand, by the way. It's kind of funny. Everybody's looking around, who hates email? Email is an amazing tool. It's an amazing invention. And like most amazing inventions, we're using it for stuff it was never designed to do, right? I mean, how many of you use it as a to-do list? How many of you have ever said the phrase, if it's not in my inbox, it won't get done, right? This was not what it's originally intended for. And we have this idea, right, that, actually, here's another one. This is probably, I'm guilty of doing this, and I wrote this chapter. How many of you have ever cleared out, gotten to inbox 0 and thought, wow, I had a really productive day today? And then you're driving home or you're taking the T home and you're like, oh, actually, I didn't do anything today except respond to email, right? So we have this theory that it equals productivity, but it's an inverted U. And a lot of places are finding that it is that exact inverted U, that productivity can go up through the communication and collaboration that it allows for, but it can also go dramatically down. And one company in particular that fascinated me was a French company called Atos. They're a technology company that basically said our productivity is not happening the way we want it to. And so, led by their CEO, they moved to become a zero email company, zero internal email. They created a variety of different products and tools in order to use communication tools. It's actually kind of weird that I'm sitting here talking about this, because when people ask me what my favorite tool to replace email is, I tell them Google Wave. I loved it. Can I just say that? I loved it. Apparently other people didn't, but I thought it was brilliant, right? So maybe this is where we start bringing that back, right? With this idea that let's replace. Anyway, so they moved to become a zero email company. They custom designed a tool for them, but a lot of other companies are finding the same thing, and they're using old school tools like the phone, or like getting up out of their desk and walking over and having a conversation. It's fascinating. But the idea that all of these share is that email has a variety of different costs and benefits, and the costs are beginning to not outweigh the benefits. So Atos moved to become a zero email company. They're still moving to become a zero email company. They're not quite there yet, but they have found that as email's going down, a variety of positives are happening. Their operating margin has increased, their earnings per share have increased, their administrative costs have decreased, because again, there's just less email to have to sort through. It's been a really good thing for them, and they become advocates for this sort of zero email lifestyle. But honestly, how many of you are sitting here and thinking, okay, there's no way I can do without my email inbox, right? I like it, I use it as my to-do list, et cetera. You have to see what I just saw. I saw a bunch of people looking down and then holding their hand up, like, I'm embarrassed to say. I'm with you too, I can't find a way to do without it, but there are ways that we can put buffers on it, right? There are other policies besides zero email. We have limited email, which is saying that we only email at certain times. So there's like a dedicated time for the email blitz, and then you focus in on doing the deep work. And then there's work hours email. One of my favorite corporate examples is a company that literally shuts the server off at 6 p.m. So if you want to take your laptop home with you, if you're that person that everybody knows who you are because you like to email at 11:30 at night, if you're that person, that's totally cool. We just won't get your emails until 8 a.m. the next morning when the server comes back on, right? What all of these have in common is two things. The idea of allowing people to design their workday in a way that works for them, right? Email is an amazing tool because it's cheap and it's asynchronous. It's cheap to send, and we send a lot of it, and it's asynchronous, so we can send it whenever we want. But what we don't think about is the fact that that means people receive it whenever we want to send it. Which means that it's great that you can take it and you can use it to design your perfect workday, but your perfect workday butts up against other people's ability to design their perfect workday. And we've never had this conversation. And you may begin to become a champion for zero or limited hours of work. That's honestly not the point. The point is we've never had a conversation about what is the right communication tool for our project, what is the right communication tool for our team, and then what are our own individual limits, right? I've talked with a lot of different people, mostly subordinates who report to a manager who likes to email at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And even though they know they don't have to, there's always that subtle pressure that you have to respond quickly. And we've never had that open and frank conversation, right? So whether it's zero email, whether it's outlawing email entirely, or whether it's actually having a conversation with your team of, hey, what is the best way to communicate and collaborate? Which tool do we want to use? We can see a lot of positive effects just from taking a deep look at how we collaborate, how we communicate.